The humid air of Manila carried the familiar noise of jeepneys, street vendors, and laughter from children running through narrow alleyways. Amid the chaos, two teenagers, Mara and Eli, stood on a street corner, their voices rising in harmony against the city's restless rhythm. They were childhood friends, bound by the same dream and the same struggle. Mara's family sold vegetables at a local market, while Eli's father drove a tricycle for long hours just to make ends meet. But when they sang together, the world around them seemed to pause. Their voices blended so naturally that even strangers stopped to listen, tossing coins into the open guitar case in front of them. For Mara and Eli, singing wasn't just a hobby, it was survival and hope intertwined. Every note carried a piece of their story, every smile from the crowd reminded them that maybe, just maybe, they were meant for something greater. One evening, as the golden sunset poured over the cracked pavement, an American tourist stopped by and filmed them performing "A Million Dreams." The man smiled, clearly moved, and uploaded the video to his social media with the caption, "These kids in Manila sing better than most recording artists I know." Within days, the video exploded across the internet, gathering millions of views. Comments flooded in from around the world, people praising their talent, their raw emotion, and the purity of their performance. For the first time, Mara and Eli saw their names trending online. They laughed, cried, and hugged each other tightly, overwhelmed by the thought that the world finally heard their voices. That night, Mara whispered, "Maybe this is the start of something big," and Eli replied, "Let's dream even louder." Weeks passed, and life in Manila continued, but everything felt different. People in the neighborhood treated them like local celebrities, asking for selfies and cheering them on when they performed at community events. Then one morning, Mara checked her email on a borrowed phone and froze. The subject line read, "Invitation to Audition, America's Got Talent 2025. Her hands trembled as she showed Eli the screen. For a moment, they just stared at each other, speechless, until tears began rolling down her cheeks. "They want us in Los Angeles," she said softly. Eli couldn't believe it, the America's Got Talent, the stage where legends were born. Their voices had reached across oceans, and now destiny was calling them to stand before Simon Cowell himself. But the road to that dream wasn't easy. They had no savings, no passports, and no idea how to afford the flight. Instead of giving up, they turned to their community for help. Neighbors organized a benefit concert in a small gymnasium, while local businesses donated snacks and drinks for the event. Mara and Eli sang their hearts out that night, performing for hundreds of people who believed in them. The crowd chanted their names, waving small Philippine flags as if already celebrating their victory. By the end of the evening, the donations were enough to buy 2 plane tickets to Los Angeles. Their families hugged them tightly, reminding them to stay humble and to sing from the heart. Before leaving, Eli's father placed his old guitar in his son's hands and said, "This guitar took me through hard days. Now it will take you to your dreams." As they walked through the airport gates, everything felt unreal. Mara had never been on an airplane before. She gazed out the window, watching the clouds stretch like cotton over the ocean. "Eli," she said softly, "what if we fail?" He smiled, gripping her hand. "Then at least the world heard us once." When the plane lifted off toward Los Angeles, both closed their eyes, hearing the faint echoes of their street performances back home. They weren't just flying to America, they were flying toward the impossible, powered by 2 voices that refused to be silenced. The bright lights of the America's Got Talent stage felt almost blinding as Mara and Eli stood hand in hand, their hearts racing faster than they ever thought possible. The crowd was massive, the energy electric, and the air thick with anticipation. This was it, the moment they had dreamed of since those long nights singing on Manila's crowded streets. Behind the judges' table sat Simon Cowell, his eyes sharp and unreadable. Sofia Vergara smiled warmly, Heidi Klum waved encouragingly, and Howie Mandel gave them a quick thumbs up. Mara's voice trembled slightly as she introduced themselves, explaining that they came all the way from the Philippines and had spent their lives singing together to survive. The audience applauded, but Simon simply leaned forward, curious yet cautious. "All right," he said with his usual calm authority, "let's hear what you've got." Eli strummed the first few notes on his father's old guitar, and Mara took a deep breath before her voice soared through the auditorium. They sang "Shallow" by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, their voices merging into something powerful and emotional, raw and beautiful. Every lyric carried the weight of their struggles, every harmony was filled with gratitude and hope. By the time they reached the chorus, the audience was already on their feet, cheering, clapping, some even wiping away tears. The camera caught Simon Cowell's expression. His usual poker face was gone, replaced by something genuine, almost stunned. As the final note faded, the crowd erupted in applause so loud it echoed through the studio. Mara and Eli looked at each other, breathless, tears streaming down their faces. For a brief moment, they forgot where they were. They were just two kids singing from their hearts, and the world was finally listening. When the applause died down, Simon stood up slowly, a rare smile forming on his face. "I did not expect that," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "That was not just good, it was extraordinary." The other judges nodded in agreement, praising their authenticity, their connection, and their incredible harmonies. Then, without warning, Simon reached across the table and slammed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti exploded from above, showering the stage as Mara and Eli broke down in tears. The crowd screamed in excitement, chanting their names as they hugged tightly, overwhelmed by emotion. Simon walked up to the stage, leaned close, and told them, "You reminded me why I love doing this show." In that moment, the dream they had carried from the streets of Manila to the world's biggest stage came true. Their families back home watched the moment live on a small TV in a neighborhood cafe, crying and cheering as gold confetti rained down thousands of miles away. The following days were a blur of interviews, media coverage, and social media buzz. The hashtag Filipino Golden Buzzer trended worldwide. People from every corner of the globe were sharing their story, two kids from the Philippines who made Simon Cowell believe in magic again. But while the fame was overwhelming, Mara and Eli stayed grounded. They practiced day and night, determined to prove that the golden buzzer wasn't luck, it was purpose. During rehearsals for the next round, Mara's voice began to strain. Exhaustion and nerves took their toll, and for the first time, doubt crept in. She worried she wouldn't be able to sing at her best. Eli stayed by her side through it all, bringing her warm tea, reminding her to rest, and whispering, "You're stronger than this. Remember why we started." When the next performance day arrived, they walked on stage with calm determination. This time, they sang, "You Raise Me Up," dedicating it to their families and every Filipino child chasing a dream. Their voices rose together like a prayer, strong yet tender, filled with emotion that touched every soul in the room. As the final chorus echoed through the theater, people stood again, some openly crying. Simon Cowell gave them another standing ovation, his hand over his heart. "You've proven that music has no borders," he said. "This is what the world needs right now, hope." The applause seemed endless, and as they bowed deeply, Mara and Eli knew something deep inside them had changed. They weren't just contestants anymore, they were voices of a dream that belonged to millions. Hollywood felt like another world for Mara and Eli. The palm trees, bright lights, and enormous billboards were nothing like the narrow streets of Manila. Everywhere they turned, people recognized them, the Filipino duet who had captured Simon Cowell's heart. But behind the glamour was pressure unlike anything they had ever faced. Every day was filled with rehearsals, vocal warm-ups, interviews, and photo shoots. They shared a tiny apartment near the studio, practicing until their voices gave out. Eli noticed Mara had been quieter than usual, often holding her throat after singing. He didn't say anything at first, hoping it was just nerves, but when she struggled to hit her usual notes during rehearsal, his heart sank. The doctor told them she was suffering from vocal strain and needed rest. Mara felt broken. "What if I lose my voice before the semifinals?" she whispered one night. Eli sat beside her, strumming the old guitar. "Then we'll sing with our hearts," he said softly. "That's what brought us here." Days passed, and while Mara rested, Eli took charge of their arrangements. He worked with the vocal coach, rehearsing harmonies alone, determined to keep their dream alive. On the morning of their next performance, Mara's voice was still weak, but she refused to back down. When the stage lights came on, the crowd cheered wildly. They sang, "You Raise Me Up," and though her voice cracked slightly in the beginning, something magical happened. Eli stepped closer, lowering his tone to blend with hers, carrying her through every line. Together, their voices rose in perfect harmony by the final chorus. It wasn't flawless, but it was real, two souls refusing to give up. The audience erupted into applause, many wiping tears. Simon Cowell stood again, visibly emotional. "You've just shown everyone what courage sounds like," he said. Backstage, Mara cried in Eli's arms, overwhelmed by relief. "We didn't just sing," she whispered, "we survived." The days leading to the finals were filled with excitement and chaos. They were now favorites to win, but instead of feeling pressure, they felt peace. They decided to perform an original song they had written together called "One Voice, One Dream." It told their story, from the dusty streets of Manila to the shining stage of AGT. The lyrics spoke of hope, sacrifice, and faith. "No matter what happens," Eli said before walking on stage, "we've already won." The arena went silent as the lights dimmed and the first notes played. Mara's voice began soft and pure, telling the story of a little girl who sang to survive. Eli joined in with a deep, steady tone, his eyes closed, lost in the music. As the chorus came, their voices intertwined beautifully. "From the street to the stars, we'll carry our song so far, one voice, one dream, one heart." The camera panned across the judges. Simon was visibly moved, Heidi wiped tears, and Sophia smiled proudly. As the final note faded, the audience exploded into a roar of applause. Confetti filled the air, and people stood cheering, chanting their names. Simon stood up, visibly choked up, and said, "You didn't just perform, you inspired the world. That song belongs to every dreamer out there." The crowd cheered louder, and Mara and Eli bowed deeply, overwhelmed with gratitude. The next morning, headlines across the world read, "Filipino Duet wins America's Got Talent 2025." Back home in Manila, entire neighborhoods celebrated. Streets were filled with people playing their winning song on speakers, waving flags, and shouting their names. When Mara and Eli returned home, thousands greeted them at the airport, holding banners that read, "Proud to be Filipino." They hugged their families, crying tears of joy. Eli looked at Mara and said, "We made it." She smiled back, her eyes filled with wonder. "No," she whispered, "we sang our way here." And as they walked through the crowd, hand in hand, they knew their story had only just begun.